Chapter 7, A Narrow Crossing. Part 1. The Bridge. The eastern sky was just beginning to pale when they saw it, the little belt bridge, stretching across the calm waters like a relic of a more hopeful time. Long and low against the horizon, the bridge shimmered faintly with dew and the distant glare of security lights. They'd made it through the veil, and the worst of the fog was behind them. But the bridge was no promise of peace, it was a threshold. Tomasz could feel it in his chest. Crossing this meant more than just survival. It meant beginning again. Jens took point, as always, his rifle slung but ready, eyes scanning every shadow and treetop. He moved with the calm precision of someone who knew this land intimately. Years ago, before everything collapsed, he'd driven past this very road every day to work. Used to listen to news radio while crossing here, he muttered as they approached. One morning I heard Denmark was closing its borders again. Never reopened after that. The checkpoint came into view. A heavily fortified position on the Funen side of the bridge. Military vehicles, portable floodlights, bunkers made from prefab steel modules. Armed guards were already watching their approach from behind sandbag barriers. But these weren't raiders or slavers. These men and women stood tall, uniforms clean, posture sharp. Proper military. "Hold where you are," a voice barked through a loudspeaker. They stopped. Hands visible. Tomasz slowly raised a hand in greeting. After a tense minute, 3 soldiers approached, weapons lowered but ready. A woman in crisp gear with a blue armband took the lead. Her accent was clear Danish. "You just came from the Vale?" "Yes," Tomasz replied. "From Jorte. We're just looking for a place to rest, to start over." She nodded and signaled back to the checkpoint. "You're clear to cross, but protocol applies. Follow us." They were led across the bridge, walking now with an odd mix of relief and unease. The water below sparkled in the sunlight, and the smell of salt and earth was stronger here. At the other end, they were brought to a prefab medical station. Inside, a medic in a white apron, young, polite, but efficient, was already prepping equipment. "All newcomers must be medically cleared," he said. "Standard disease check, plus biometric registration. It's for your own safety, and ours." Amelia hesitated. "What kind of biometric?" "Retina scan. Fingerprint. A quick DNA swab. Nothing intrusive. If you choose to stay in Funen, we need to know who you are, and who you aren't." It wasn't a request. One by one, they were scanned. The eye scanner beeped softly for each. The finger pads lit up green as they confirmed matches. The DNA swab took a little longer. Tomasz sat tense, watching over Maja as she went through it. "Thank you," the medic finally said. "You're clean. All of you." Back outside, a soldier handed Tomasz a small sealed pouch. Inside were protein rations, water packs, and a simple map of southern Funen. Another man, an older officer with a tired but friendly face, met them at the exit. "You're welcome here," he said, gesturing to the countryside beyond. "Organized communities, fair trade, and strong law enforcement. We've built something again. No slavers. No raiders. If you contribute, you're part of it." Jens stepped forward. "Any advice on where to go?" The officer nodded. "Plenty of towns would take someone like Tomasz. Teacher, right?" "Yes." "Then you'll be wanted. But stay clear of the Vale. Stay clear of the black circles." Tomasz furrowed his brow. "Black circles?" The officer pulled a folded note from his pocket and handed it to Tomasz. It was a printed legend. "Red circle, free to use. Emergency housing. Yellow circle, occupied or in use. Ask before entering. Black circle, restricted or dangerous. Avoid. We mark doors this way across Funen. Make sure you follow it. And if you take a red circle house for the night, turn it yellow." "Understood," Tomasz said quietly. They left the checkpoint on foot, crossing onto clean asphalt roads lined with trimmed hedges and solar lights. The fields beyond were green and vibrant. Cows grazed in the distance. The air smelled of wildflowers and soil, not smoke. People were out too. Some walking dogs, others tending gardens. Smiles were cautious but real. And for the first time in a long time, they didn't feel hunted. Part 2. A clean house. The sun was starting to dip behind low hills when they reached the outer edge of a quiet town. Unlike the ruins they'd passed through in Poland and the fog-shrouded streets of Jorte, this place looked almost untouched. Clean lines, painted houses, flower beds. A working world. Still, they were cautious. Every house they passed, Jens scanned for the small painted circles the officer had warned them about. A few yellow ones, occupied. One black, boarded up and eerily silent. But then they found it, a modest white house with a faded red circle painted neatly to the left of the front door. Jens approached first, tapping twice on the frame. "Empty," he said after a quick glance through the windows. "Clear." Tomasz moved to the door and opened it slowly. The scent inside wasn't rot or mildew, it was soap. Real soap. The furniture was old but clean. A small, well-maintained kitchen. A single bookshelf still had a few manuals and cookbooks on it. A narrow staircase led up to what looked like 2 small bedrooms. Power was running. Solar panels hummed gently outside, feeding into a silent inverter box under the stairs. Maja walked into the living room and slowly sat on the couch, sinking into the cushions. Her eyes widened. I forgot things could feel this soft. Zofia laughed quietly. We used to complain about furniture like this. Jens went to the door and pulled a piece of red cloth from his pack, dipped it in water, and rubbed away the red circle. Then, with yellow chalk, he drew a careful yellow ring in its place. Done, he said. Ours for the night. They all stood still for a moment, not speaking, just absorbing the quiet comfort of a real home. Then the spell broke. Tomasz busied himself heating the rations they'd been given at the checkpoint. Amelia found a cupboard with preserved vegetables and jars of honey. Someone had left this behind with care, not panic. Later, when the meal was done, and the heat of food settled in their bellies, they heard the low growl of a hydrogen engine approaching. It stopped just beyond the hedgerow. A knock. Everyone froze. Jens opened the door cautiously, rifle lowered but ready. Outside stood a man in his 50s, wearing work-stained overalls and a broad smile. His hair was gray, and his hands were calloused, but he looked more like a mechanic than a soldier. Evening, he said warmly. Saw the yellow circle. Thought I'd check who came in. Tomasz stepped forward. We came from the Vale, Jorte. The checkpoint let us through today. The man nodded, eyes narrowing with understanding. Rough journey, I imagine. Name's Pol. I live just up the road. Alone now. You're welcome to stay here tonight. It's one of the communal houses. Good to see it used. They invited him in, and soon they were all gathered in the small living room, sipping herbal tea Pol had brought. He listened to their story without interrupting, nodding solemnly at the mention of Jorte, and the fog, and the near escape. When the tale was done, Pol leaned back. Most who come through are directed to Odense or Middelfart. That's where the military wants people. Structured, industrial, secure, but not always fair, and not always free. Tomasz studied him. You have a better idea? There's a town, well, the beginning of one, down on the coast, Faubourg. Nothing like what it was. In 37 it was leveled by a hydrogen bomb. Gone in a flash. For years it was ash and ghosts. But people have started rebuilding. Not under state control. Independent. Community-driven. Still small. Still rough. But honest. Sounds like something we could use, Jen said quietly. I'm driving south in the morning. My work's halfway there. I can drop you at a crossroads. From there, it's a day's walk. Tomasz looked at his daughter, then at Amelia and Maja. We'll take that ride. That night, they slept in real beds, under real blankets. Maja spent 10 minutes in the shower, laughing as the water ran over her like a forgotten dream. Tomasz stood by the window before turning in, watching the stars over Funen. It felt like the end of something, and the fragile beginning of something else. Part 3, The Road South. The morning came with the smell of real coffee. Pol stood by the small stove in the communal house's kitchen, humming to himself as he poured steaming cups. You'll miss this when you're back on foot, he said with a grin. They ate quietly, grateful and focused. Outside, the dawn light filtered through the trees, catching on the dew-slicked grass and the panels on Pol's old hydrogen truck. It sat ready, humming faintly. By the time they loaded up their bags, Pol had packed a few jars of pickled vegetables, dried bread, and a tin of powdered milk for the road. Not much, but it'll keep you upright. The ride started slow. The hydrogen truck wasn't fast, but it was steady. Pol drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the window. Amelia sat beside him, pointing out the clean fields and wind turbines lazily spinning in the distance. You know, Pol said after a while, when this place was hit back in 37, it was like the world blinked. They didn't just bomb a city, they erased history. But people are stubborn. Some came back, some never left. You'll find bits of the old town if you look closely. Parts of the church still stand, the old harbors being rebuilt. In the back of the truck, Zofia leaned her head against Tomasz's shoulder. Maja sat on the wheel well, arms resting on her knees, eyes focused ahead. Jens rode silently, map in hand, scanning the route. It was clear he recognized the terrain. They passed towns marked with yellow circles, and occasionally a black one, standing silently like a warning. But for the most part, they saw neat, functional buildings and long stretches of open farmland. People waved from bicycles or stood chatting near small shops. It was different here. Structured, but human. This road used to be part of the old supply route, Jen said, half to himself. Back in 2024, I drove here every day. From Kolding to a depot south of Odense. Nothing looked like this back then. Maja looked at him. Does it feel like home? He hesitated. It feels familiar, but not quite home. Just before noon, Pol pulled off onto a small gravel lot beside a split in the road. A faded sign still read, Faubourg, 26 kilometers, arrowing to the south. The other road led east toward a military checkpoint and an industrial hub. This is as far as I go, Pol said, stepping out of the truck. The coast is that way. You'll be on foot now, but it's quiet this direction. Not many checkpoints. Keep to the woods when you can. And remember what I said, Faubourg's rough, but it's something real. Tomasz offered a firm handshake. Thank you. For everything. Pol nodded, then looked at the girls. Stay sharp. People are better here, but the world's still cracked. They watched the truck disappear down the east road, the faint hum fading into bird song and wind. Then they turned south, their boots crunching gravel as they followed the faded road through forest and field. By dusk, they found an abandoned farmhouse, red circle still faint on the door. Inside it was dusty but dry. They swept the floor, lit a candle, and made a quiet meal. Sitting by the window, Maja whispered, "It's different here, but I'm still waiting for something to go wrong." Tomasz placed a hand on her shoulder. That's survival, but maybe now we're surviving toward something better. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees, and for the first time in weeks, the night felt like it belonged to them. Part 4. A knock at dawn. The farmhouse was quiet through the night, the kind of silence that only comes in truly rural places, broken now and then by wind in the trees, the creak of old wood, and the occasional owl. Tomasz had taken the first watch, sitting by the window with a sharpened stick of wood in one hand and an old kitchen knife tucked into his belt, but nothing stirred, no lights in the dark, no danger creeping close. By early morning, they were all asleep, scattered on cushions and rugs in the main room. Then came the knock, loud and fast, like a hammer slamming against the old wooden door. "Open up, military security." Everyone jolted awake. Jens moved first, pulling his jacket on while signaling silence. Tomasz was right behind him, slipping to the door with calm, controlled movements. When he opened it, the daylight poured in around two armored figures with rifles and gray uniforms, not the same neat, well-trained soldiers from the bridge. These men looked tired, dust-covered, and tense. Behind them, two men lay cuffed in the street, faces to the dirt, their weapons tossed nearby. One was groaning. "You folks stay here last night?" the taller soldier asked gruffly, scanning the room behind Tomasz. "Yes," Tomasz replied. "We just arrived yesterday." The other soldier pointed at the cuffs. "Caught these two trying to bust into a house down the lane. Looking for food," they said. "No red circle, so it's off limits. This time they're lucky. Next time, they'll lose more than their guns." Jens came to the door, arms folded. "They locals?" "Drifters," the tall soldier replied. "Plenty of them around here lately. Some mean well. Some don't. We don't take chances." Tomasz nodded slowly. "Understood." The soldiers moved on, dragging the men back toward a waiting vehicle, an armored buggy caked in mud. No goodbyes, just the grind of tires and a cloud of dust. As the dust settled, a heavy silence returned. "That felt different," Zofia whispered. "Too different," Jens muttered. "They weren't like the ones at the checkpoint. This place might be organized, but not all of it's clean." They sat together in the farmhouse kitchen, a cold morning meal untouched on the table. Maja sipped water and looked out the window. "Maybe this isn't the place," she said. "Not the towns. Not the checkpoints. I don't want to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder." Tomasz leaned back, his arms crossed. "We've seen too much to chase comfort. What we need is space. Room to live. Fish. Grow something. Sleep without knocks on the door." Jens nodded. "There's land east of here. Pockets between the old villages. Sparse. Hard to patrol. Might be what we're looking for." Zofia added, "If we're careful, we can trade now and then. Just enough to stay off the radar." And so, the decision was made, not for grand cities or organized rebuilding, but for quiet resilience. A life not on the run, but one that still kept a knife sharpened and the door braced. As they packed their bags and cleaned the place behind them, Tomasz reached for a piece of charcoal and drew a yellow circle on the door. "Occupied," he muttered, "for one night, and maybe again someday." Then they walked east, toward the edge of the mapped world, toward something that might become a home.